Welcome back and on with the show. The pigeons have been evicted from the roof, though building work continues. Ever the professional, I should continue. In my previous little videoettes I mentioned Bob the biker and just introduced you to him. I grew up around bikes, scooters mainly, on my dad's side. Dad had a Lambretta, his pride and joy. He had it for years, and eventually my first memory of being on a bike, when my little legs were long enough and could reach the running board. My mum's white cork and leather, very 1960s in vogue crash helmet perched on my little bonnet, hanging on the back for dear life, and Dad would take us off on little road trips. That was much as I wanted a bike when I was growing up. I ended up driving a car first. That said, being into rock, being into heavy metal, bike culture was just interwoven. And so obviously most of my friends rode, and we were very much part of that culture. So as soon as I was settled with a good lady, a bike became very high on the agenda. So, me being me, I decided that I'd go for direct access. Money, I was working. So I booked myself up in the Medway towns, a direct access, basically straight through 125 and then on to whatever size bike you wanted to ride. It was about a week, I think. Well, I duly turned up, was issued my wonderful little SR125, a bit of a weenie bike. And having wobbled through the cones successfully and done my little road things, CBT passed, and then off riding back home. I proudly, sounding a bit like that, and dropped in to see Dad, who couldn't quite keep the smile off his face with me, sort of perched on this little 125. Well, days were spent riding back up from home here on one side across the county, off to the Medway towns, to learn the noble arts of riding a bike. I did fairly well, pretty good road sense. A few turning in the road moments were a little bit tricky. At one point I think I pretty much picked the bike up by the front and back and walked it round in the road. But a few days of training in, and it was deemed that I'd be up for my test. The day of the test dawned, and my riding instructor said, just keep an eye out for what the instructor's riding, and if they ask what you want, something along the same lines as their bike. So I looked in the bay, and actually there was parked a stunning Harley. I came in, usual thing, helmets on, all the comms on. As you leave the test centre, please take the next right. And so off I proceeded around one of the many test routes that we've been practising on. Inevitably, he chose the route with the roundabout system that was designed by, I don't know, somebody with a spaghetti obsession. It's an intricate series of roundabouts and hills. Having successfully negotiated the lanes round, and on going up one of the hills, a bus started to pull out. Seeing it was clear behind, I decided I'd overtake. At which point the bus started to pick up some speed. And between the sort of, slipstream of the bus, the drag factor of me, and the awesome power of the little 125, it was barges overtaking each other. With the roundabout coming up in front, I needed to get in front to go left. So I did the logical thing. This is quite a big sail. I understand the principles of physics. So I tucked myself in, chin on the tank, throttle wide open, and just got in front of the bus. I had my feet hanging on the rear pegs. Came in, sat up, indicated, made the correct observations, and made my move. Eventually on getting back to the test centre, I was sort of thinking, well, that wouldn't have gone down too well. So I was pretty much expecting to be called in and try again next week. But no, he was impressed. He understood that I'd needed to perform the manoeuvre, and was duly asked after the relevant stopping distances and all the usual questions what I'd be riding. Oh, a Harley. Well done, and away I went. Updated driving licence in hand, I returned to the local bike dealers to buy my first bike, a CB500 with not many miles on the clock, because I think it was either the second clock or it had been dispatched right round the clock. The draw for me was the king and queen seat and the handmade A-frame chrome sissy bar put on the back with wing nuts. A classy bike. It was a bit of a nail. It was winter time. It was what I needed. I rode the thing. I think it lasted a few months. And come the spring, I traded it in for my first proper bike. It's a Honda V4000. Absolutely lovely. Loads of low down energy. Lots of torque, and my goodness, it's just a great touring bike. And we rode all over, off to the Bath and West showgrounds for just epic adventures down there. Travelling off to see friends, road trips west, even going out and spending a long ride down to Tintagel, and then camping out in Tintagel, the home of wizards, as you'll know from the One days. Those worlds, scientist, biker, all mixing together. Well, eventually I rode I remember, most momentous ride on the VF. I rode it all year round back then. Before my accident, I was an all-year rider. And Julie, arriving at work, was tasked to go down to one of the ranges near to where I'd passed my test. It was winter, sunny day, but as I dropped down into the valley, it became foggy, which then turned to freezing fog, which then turned to very thick frost. Now basically riding out on these little tiny roads with a dike on either side full of frozen water, pretty much riding along, head on the white line, with a line of cars behind me, until eventually slipping and sliding, my nerve started to go. I pulled into the side for basically warm my hands up, have a cigarette break, waved the car up, who basically stopped and looked at me. I was like, "Mate, you're going to have to go on, I need to warm my hands up." And he said, "We can't actually see the road. Everybody's following your red tail light. Would you mind leading back on again?" So I had a brake, led to my little convoy of ducks out through. And as often was the case, as the sun boiled through, the fog lifted slightly, and I arrived at the gate, trying to find my pass with a sheet of ice, beard frozen into my helmet. Cracked the ice off, shook my pass out, and then basically had to sit with my hands on the engine block, as all bikers know from the winter, to try and thaw them out enough to be able to unzip my gloves. Why did I do it? We all do it. We love it. I rode through a few snowstorms, not many, and decided that that was the point where cars were a safer option. In fact, that VF only ever had one accident, and it was a pretty minor one. I was riding back home, just got to the bus stop, hordes of school children, went to put my foot down and didn't see the pothole, and basically toppled straight into the side of the bus stand. Kids hooting with laughter as I hauled the bike back up, got it into place, kicked the foot peg round and rode off. Not much of an injury, only my pride. Well, when that wonderful old VF eventually ran out of miles and the dreaded cam chain rattle of the head started, it was time to trade my bike in. I went off to the local bike dealers again. And what should I spy sitting on the front forecourt? One careful owner was a wonderful black ZZR 1100. The Z1000s were a fast bike in their time. The ZZR was at its time, or at that time, the fastest production bike. It looked pretty comfortable, so I asked for a test ride. Without getting all bikery, V4s are very low in a power band. This was an altogether different bit, so I'm just riding off. Wow. But it felt very planted at slow speed. I was impressed. Getting out onto the local bypass, clearly way before the time of speed cameras and sensible human beings that I am now, thought we'd give it a little bit of a run. And shot down the standard, I don't know, test route. I'll be honest, I got back. I wasn't that impressed with it, really. It didn't seem to be that quick. Lovely bike. I got chatting to the guy that had been out on a test ride and riding with me. Just tell me, says, why did you keep changing gears so short? Well, just going on the sound. He was like, this is different from your old bike. Look at where the red line is. Now take it back out and change when that gets closer to the red line. Okay then. So I tootled out through the town, nice and quietly, as you would, until I got to the open piece of carriageway. Alright, fair enough. And as I wound the throttle open, I'll be honest, it was like being in the Millennium Falcon. Trees started to blur from out here. Everything went quiet. Looked down at the speeder, didn't tell you what would do. And I absolutely fell in love with that bike. I went back, signed the old girl away, frantically signed up for whatever finance I needed, plus cash, to secure a bike that was with me for 19 years. That was quick and comfortable. Just what a beautiful bike. I put a fair few miles on that bike. A fair few miles over the years. At the time, if I wasn't working or being a baby wizard, we were out at bike events, off to the custom rallies, off to custom shows, local rallies, wherever we could get out. It's a good social scene. And these were very much my personal days of recreational fun weekends. I had a great time, partied like an absolute biker, took tablets, developed a bit of an interest in, oh yes, I certainly would say that I enjoyed my speed. Did I become a drug addict? No. These were just parties on a weekend, on Monday, sharp as a nail, back at work, and a few beers of an evening, the same as everybody else. Now, many have got tales of dives into addictions. Mine, still tobacco, always has been, goes back a long way. But I will not share tales of these weekends, mainly because I can't remember them. You'll have to ask somebody else, but apparently I had a huge amount of fun. Those days aside, probably one of the greatest, the highlight of the year, certainly from a lot of us, as well as the upcoming May Day run from down to the coast. Chance to walk around thousands of bikes, all making their way down the A21. My greatest tale of the A21 was having picked up the local landlord who was bikeless that year as he shoehorned himself into his levers. And as we pulled up through the town, I said, "You better hang on to me." To which he distinctly turned around and said, "I will not." Until we hit the open road and I opened the throttle. Bike went up like that. He went backwards like a stunt rider. Helmet bounced, stood on the brakes, The bike came back up and he limpeted onto me all the way down to Hastings. It was a great run out. I said I just look back on those days as just joyous. Wind in my beard, freedom, having found, I don't know, I suppose we all look for our people. I'd found my clan. They were all big and hairy, wore leathers, we all listened to the same music. Happy days indeed. Another highlight of the year was the Bulldog Bash, run by the Hells Angels up in Warwickshire, Shakespeare's country. It's a fair run up for us. We'd all assemble, load the bikes with everything that we'd need for the weekend, and off we'd run. I'd generally be at the back. It was a big bike, and while the lead would be going fairly sensible speeds, at the back of the pack means that you're riding quite quick. Now, the draw of the Bulldog Bash is that it's held around a drag strip and you get to run what you run. So having had a, timid attempt on the VF, I think once, as I rattled it up there just to say that I'd been up a drag strip, I decided that I'd give it a proper go on the ZZR. Now please bear in mind at the time, as I said, even though I can't remember it, I did tend to party a lot, so I might not have been at the sharpest in the mornings. But having taken the bike for a scrutineering, you get your little cardboard race numbers, and off we went to the line. On one memorable occasion, I have literally sat there while the Christmas tree lights rotated twice before the marshals came up and tapped both of us and went, "Boys, you're going to have to run." I have also, the year after, done a bit of practicing, performed an epic rolling burnout, lit my rear tyre up. The physics, of course, is hot wheel, hot sticky tarmac, where everybody launches from, good traction, fastest launch times. Well, having performed my epic rolling burnout, ready for my launch, in a more sensible state than the year before, promptly dumped the clutch and stored the bike in front of the stands of many, many onlookers. The lad next to me basically shot off while I'm sitting there going, oops. Restarted the bike, and after a gingerly take off, rode out my ride of shame, thinking, well, no one's going to notice, to ride back down the drag line or round the return line to a round of applause and a few hand gestures. Well deserved, I may add. Well, putting aside that little disastrous run, I enjoyed it. Bike was fairly quick. Had a bit of a, what can we say, bit of a mechanical streak to us. That engineering side came up, so basically decided over the course of one winter to see what we could do to improve the performance of the bike. I was already quick, but other road bikes were just starting to take that peak. I sent the bike into the local speed shop and basically bored the engine out. The head was flowed by the great Stan Stevens up at Brands Hatch. They were custom made copper gaskets, custom cams, Kent custom cams. You name it, it went into the build of this. A stock gearbox, but pretty much from everything from the top up was massively rebuilt, and the whole lot fed through a set of huge stainless steel Renegade pipes. It sounded amazing, and after a bit of fine tuning, it made 186 brake horsepower at the rear wheel. It was a quick bike. Unless I'm a heavy unit and my reaction times are that of, ooh, I don't know, a cave bear. So I was never much of a rider. But I did have one year which sticks in my mind. My year of years on the drag strip. I got to the stage where we were running fairly good times, but the more popular the event became, the longer the wait times, and you get 1, 2, 3 runs in hours. It was good to watch everybody else running, but it tied up a lot of time. I think I was about to pull out the line and give up because the queues was huge. And a guy wearing Hell's Angel prospects, so not the full rockers, but enough on his back, nodded to me and said, "You're racing me next," and then took us to the front of the queue. I looked at him, looked at his back patch, okay. Did the decent thing, so I rolled up onto the line, and we started. I took off, he just took me off the line, and it was a good race. I suddenly realised that I was starting to pull ahead. In fact, I had just nipped ahead. Sensible thing, I mean, don't stand on the brakes and make it obvious, but he's back a little bit. Yeah, there he goes. And he pipped me at the line. Thinking, well, that was good. I'll be alive. And as we pulled down the strip, the visor came up. Fuck do you think you're doing? Why did you pull off? Well raced. Like, no. Missing the point. I want you to race as hard as you can, and I'm going to chase you down. I was like, okay. And then he explained to me the noble art of drag racing classes. He was racing in twins, I was in bottom of Jap Group 4. He was likely to be heading towards the top of twins, and basically was going to use me as a marker to haul him into faster times. I thought, well, that sounds like sound policy. And I had a great afternoon. We were up and down until I treaded my tyre, literally wore my tyre out. Thousands of miles of careful riding gone. An afternoon of fun. But what an experience. So you get to sit there, all the joys of us racing, watching other racing. The sheer power of top fuel dragsters up close is something which still, I don't know, some kind of primal engineer in me. It's come a long way from a steam engine. Well, I'm aware that I'm waxing lyrical about happy days on motorcycles. And that meant what I said. The reason why I was a biker is because there is that brotherhood, sisterhood, that sense of community, of looking out for each other on the road. As always, there's a little lesson in all of my wanderings, and that is this: no matter what your tribe, find your tribe. Now go well, and blessed be, and thank you for listening to the witterings of a wizard with a biker hidden within.